Afternoon, everyone. You're very welcome onto this webinar on responsible plastic management in construction from CAF's commercial partner, RPM, which is the global quality mark for responsible plastic management in the workplace. So, of course, a topic of growing importance for this industry and lots of others also. So, delighted to say we have the experts to speak with us today, alongside our colleagues from RPM. Peter, Dave, and Aaron is here also. We have Keith O'Flynn from Sisk. Keith is Sisk's Supply Chain and Sustainability Manager. And Neve, unfortunately, can't make it today. So I'm very happy to welcome everyone along this afternoon. And just to say, there is a Q&A chat function. Please do feel free to use it and pop any questions you like, and then we'll come to those at the end. So happy to hand over to yourself, Peter, to get started.
Okay, thanks, Vincent. Thanks to everybody for giving up their time to come on the webinar today. I appreciate that people have busy schedules and competing priorities, and also we've got the sun in the sky and some great weather out there, so it's probably competing as well. So thanks very much. So hope we make this of some value. So the aim of this session is really to give you a better insight into the importance of plastic management, help identify some of the best practices that can be considered, identify initiatives like RPM, which offer collaborative support through your RPM key partner, Sisk, one of our key clients, demonstrate the viability and value that RPM participants have found, and to show some potential roadmaps for organizations who get involved. So first, a quick slide on the Responsible Plastic Management Program. We're a homegrown organization founded in 2019, so we're about 5 to 6 years old. We're a certified social enterprise, and we have a big mission in terms of to try and get better plastic management in supply chains. We are definitely not anti-plastic. Plastic has its place, very functional, and is evident in so many different aspects of our lives. But what we're trying to deal with is plastic mismanagement. So we don't want plastic ending up, in our oceans, in the environment, in our food systems. And so what we are trying to do is create a network, a collaborative movement that encourages more opportunities for better infrastructure, better alternatives, better processes, and enhanced value through action. So we're trying to give credibility and some creds to people who are on that journey and help to create some solutions. So we've been very successful in the hospitality sector, where we have about 8,000 hotels that are involved in the program, and collaboratively together they're diverting about 29 million pounds of waste away from landfill. 10 million pounds of that would be plastic from bathrooms, and so that has a big impact reduction both on the environment in terms of CO2 equivalents, water savings, etc. And then we have involvement from other sectors: construction, pharmaceutical, IT, manufacturing, right across the board. So responsible plastic management is really relevant to every type of business. Not going to really dwell too much on the plastic problems, because I think even the kids in the schools now are being educated that we have a major plastic mismanagement problem, in that we produce over 400 million tons of plastic per annum, and we can't handle the volume of waste. And so from a sustainability point of view, this is triple impact. It's fossil fuel, non-renewable resources being used, insufficient recycling, and it's polluting the environment, damages the wildlife, food and water security, and really we've got a global crisis that nobody is in denial about. So the likely end fate for plastic waste is landfill. An increase in amount starting to go from to waste to energy. Relatively small amount is being sort of like recycled, and another sort of like relatively moderate amount is being sort of like shipped to third countries, or nobody's really asking the question of where it goes to. So what we want to do is sort of like improve circularity, and have more plastics going towards recycling, as a key target. So when people ask what does responsible plastic management look like, it is achievable, and therefore, we're giving, people sort of like accolades for getting involved in the journey, becoming engaged. And that could involve things like developing plastic management policies, such as for single-use plastic, getting involved in plastic awareness training, better plastic waste management, and setting targets to remove problem and pointless plastics. A key sort of like factor, it's, responsible plastic management is not about getting in the way of business and operations. It shouldn't be a constraint. And we hope to sort of like demonstrate through some of Keith's presentation today that, this can definitely be of value to business as well as the environment. So we deal with some process points that need to be addressed. Procurement, they're the gatekeepers of what comes in to an organization. So we've got to, work with procurement to determine context. So, is the plastic a problem or not a problem? So with construction, we're dealing with a lot of long-term sort of like plastics, and therefore relatively, don't seem to be such an issue. But there is a lot of single-use plastics. There's a lot of packaging that's involved. And so we're looking at, are there better alternatives? Are they viable? And are they necessary? And then looking at operations, they're looking at, increased waste management costs. So, can they be reduced through better plastic management? What are the waste alternative options? We're looking at increasing and emerging taxes coming through, such as plastic tax. We're looking at emerging legislation and regulations. And we're also sort of like looking at, what are the visible single-use plastics? What are the visible problem plastics such as PVC and foams? And what we can see from the sales perspective is that, a number of the tenders have green requirements. A number of the market, requirements are now looking for more evidence of sort of like social value and sort of like green credentials. So we're trying to help with that. So we're trying to take people along on a journey from, stage zero, doing nothing, no plan, not really thinking that plastics is their problem, through to a RPM level and stage where they're starting to look at what type of plastics are coming in. So plastic type identification, starting to learn about the categorization of those, how much they have quantification and context in order they can have a better conversation in those sort of like later stages with some of their suppliers and some of their waste contractors to say, is there better opportunities for segregation? Is there better opportunities for end fate improvement? And then we have the optional verification and certifications for those who want to go forward with it. It's not compulsory, but organizations like Sisk have taken this full on and taken it right through to certification of best practice, which has been great to see. So I'll now hand over to Dave Garforth, who's the technical lead with the RPM program, and he'll talk about some of this plastic management in the context of construction. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just find my slides, and it's for some reason moved to the wrong one. Just 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to start to look a little bit more about the construction plastics, and we probably are all aware that plastic really is a challenge when we put it in the context of plastic as waste. So before that, it's obviously of enormous value to all types of businesses and sectors, and construction, of course, is no exception to that. And indeed, we could spend all day looking at all the different types of formats, functions, and types of plastics which are used in constructions, whether it be in terms of infrastructure and used in buildings and other parts of construction, whether it be packaging around materials to protect it, or indeed whether it's other types of functionality, which to some extent will also protect people, whether it's PPE or whether it's hoarding around buildings and things like this. So has enormous variety of functions, and thereby it's a very valuable material in the construction sector, and you couldn't possibly conceive having a construction industry without plastics. And if we start to look at the different types of plastics, but rather than looking at all those different formats and types of plastics, if we start to focus on polymers, because all plastics are made out of polymers, and in construction, about 90% of all those different types of plastics which are used and are encountered can be typed into 5 or 6 particular polymer types, and these are those here listed on the screen. So polyvinyl chloride, construction uses a lot of this type of material, but other formats, high density polyethylene, its cousin, low density polyethylene, often encountered as packaging, shrink wrap and things like this more than anything else, and some of the formats is listed there. So in reality, if we were to raise our awareness a little bit about these types of polymers, and the reason why I'm putting the focus on polymers is because that's incredibly important to the recycling sector. They want to understand the different types of plastics, and they'd like to have it separated and segregated by polymer type, if at all possible, or narrowed down at least. And that adds a lot. That's a really important thing for that particular sector, and for the construction sector to improve its recycling rates. So construction's a big use of plastics. It's actually the second biggest use of plastics, apart from packaging. Packaging is number 1, and of course, we use a lot of packaging in construction as well. Construction also generates a lot of waste, and about 38% of all waste in Europe comes from the construction sector. And if we looked at plastic itself as waste, about 20% of all plastic waste comes from the construction sector. So that points to an enormous opportunity. If we could improve the situation we're in terms of recycling of plastics, or at least recovering of plastics, we could potentially add enormous value to businesses across the entire supply chain by doing so. At the moment in Europe, the landfilling rate of plastics is around about 26-27%. In plastics recycling, we're around about 23-24% in the construction sector across Europe, and the space in between that is filled by energy recovery, and then there's a question mark because there's still some unknown sort of end fates of plastics and where it ends up, so some data gaps. And simply put, unsorted plastic waste, only sorted waste equals reduced opportunity. So the more that waste skips look like this, the more you've lost the opportunity to add value to businesses. And really, the simple message here in terms of best practice is trying to remove that from that situation to one where it's sorted and categorized as much as we possibly can do it, and done so before it gets contaminated. And I'm not going to dwell on that much longer than that, because Keith's got a presentation where he's going to show us this in action and this working. So what does RPM do? What can we offer? Well, we're a collaborative organisation, we're a member organisation, and we're trying to create points of focus for organisations to rally around and come together and collaborate for success through knowledge, that sense of getting away together, create a common purpose, looking at the existing systems and seeing how we can develop best practice, and importantly, how we can bring solutions to this sector. And we do that in a fairly straightforward way when we break it down into a sort of a pathway, a journey plan with some signposts. So essentially, it's about raising awareness, getting to understand those polymers that you encounter, the types and how much you're encountering of it, each type, and what's happening to at this point in time, so we can establish a baseline and then look at how we can make those improvements. And that collaboration piece is vital. It's critical to that, bringing suppliers in and Importantly, the waste contractors and collectors, and also solution providers, recyclers. And having that data is important to bring them in, because that sparks their interest and gets them involved. And then it's really about developing best practice. And what we've done around this particular sector is create this campaign, a zero plastic to landfill campaign. And the reason why we've done that is to create a common purpose and focus. And we're inviting construction companies to get involved with this campaign, come together, support for solutions. We've created a challenge phase where we've got a sort of like a journey plan. I'll show you that in a second. It's fairly straightforward, but through that journey plan, look at opportunities for improvement. As that's happening, it gets documented, it gets monitored, and through that process, it allows us to offer verification and then recognition for that success as well. And that's the zero plastic to landfill certification. So just having a short look at this 6-point plan that we've created. It's really about coming to us, stating your commitment. We can support with that, and then we can help and assist construction companies unravel the different types of plastics which are being used within the business and organization. Get some data on that. You probably already have some data in that sense already. And then what we do is engage with different elements in the sector, in the supply chain, particularly the waste contractors and the solution providers, and bring them together through this challenge, creating that common point of focus, and using that, making a plan, identify targets and solutions to drive them forward. And through time, and we don't put pressure on organizations. This is not meant to get in the way of business. It's meant to support business and work alongside it. But through that, review progress, and at some point in time, offer that opportunity to get recognized for that success. And of course, success doesn't end there. It continues. And that data continues to get collected and masked, and that value continues to grow and develop, and so the solutions come together. And at that point, I'm going to just pause and stop sharing and invite Keith to come in and show us an example of how this particular process of zero plastic to landfill is working. Thanks, Keith.
Thanks, Dave. I think everybody can see my screen. Many thanks to the guys at RPM and CEF for inviting me to speak with you today. This has been a fantastic initiative for Sisk. I'll be honest, from the very start. It has completely changed the way we approach waste management, and in particular management of plastics on our projects. And this initiative has already been embedded within our waste management systems as a company, and is an exemplar showcase for any project now. And we have multiple projects across our portfolio looking to embed this. So I'll delve a bit deeper into that maybe towards the end of the presentation. Just to start off, I'll just give you a bit of an idea of around Sisk and where we stand as a business. So Sisk released a roadmap back in 2020, which was a 2030 sustainability roadmap. So within this roadmap were targets related to waste. You can see target 11, 12, 13, 14, all looking at waste management, looking at zero avoidable waste, looking at embedding circular economy principles, but in particular target 13, we focused on single-use plastics, and we looked to eliminate them from all our operations by 2023. An ambitious target. Of course, it comes with limitations, but it allowed that ambition to really embrace what we've done with RPM and the zero plastic to landfill. Just to give an idea of some of our targets so far. So since 2019, we've looked at reducing our waste intensity. Obviously, that's been a particular success for us, and we've been able to reduce our waste intensity right down on our 2024 data, and 2025, we hope to be following a similar trend. But to focus a bit more on our plastics. So we with our targets, we kind of started looking at across the board what is the issue of plastics? We know there's an issue there, but in terms of data, is there something there we can pull out in tangible numbers? And they've went through some very, important numbers across, the wider construction industry and how impactful construction is, across Europe and globally in terms of the amount of waste we produce. But in particular, plastic packaging is a problem. The recent Supply Chain Sustainability School released a industry study which showed that there's between 5% and 50% of volume of project waste is plastic packaging. Now, obviously, that is a huge variance of 45%, but if you look at construction, it goes across the board from infrastructure right the way through to fit out. So you can imagine those different types of construction projects will have different types of plastic packaging. We ourselves done a bit of a deep dive into our skips, which we done on a Galway site, and we looked at there were probably about 20% of that volume of that skip was related to packaging. And then to give a bit of an idea of numbers in Sisk back in 2022, we spent 1.7 million euro just in Ireland alone on mixed waste skips. And if you can imagine the amount of plastic packaging that would have been going into that mixed waste skips, we talk about your 20% and even up to 50% in certain projects. Imagine the take back and the removal of that packaging from those mixed waste skips and the impact that can have on the bottom line. So the proposal essentially it's a simple one. Initially, I brought the proposal to our project, Vantage, which is out in West Dublin. It's a large project working on a data center. So we knew there was a certain amount of area that we could work with in terms of waste management. The client there was very keen to get involved in terms of waste management practices. And we also had just a great site. The guys in site really kind of embraced what we were trying to achieve. I won't go through all of these, but essentially what we done was engage with RPM. And the guys at RPM were heavily involved from the very start and really kind of showed us the way in terms of what the steps were needed to be in place in order to better manage plastics on our site. We then looked at zero plastic landfill really as that initiative, and we aimed for that certification. But the aims were not just around that zero plastic landfill certification. You're looking at many different aims within this, such as you're reducing costs, optimizing volumes, improve the quality and consistency of recyclability, and influence and give good examples of where positive waste management practices can really help projects and really help not just in terms of the right thing to do in terms of sustainability and reducing our impact on the environment, but also the potential gains in terms of public knowledge and even the bottom line in terms of reducing costs. So Vantage, as I mentioned, was the main project that we focused on. It is large, as I mentioned, out in West Dublin. They did have room for us to engage with and bring on these different businesses. So they've talked about the collaboration piece earlier on. RPM heavily involved. Obviously, the guys have been highly influential to us there. But really, the collaboration with RPM and bringing on the likes of Thornton's Recycling, who are our main waste contractors, and then in turn bringing on Waste Matters, who were able to then manage our plastic waste at a really kind of detailed level, allowed us to kind of hone down on that plastic recycling initiative. So this is just to give you an idea of some of the process involved of managing plastics on site. So the project team were brilliant from the very start. They created the space and created the units that we required in order to really kind of bring plastic recycling to the forefront. And that meant an investment of balers. So just show one picture, one baler here, but we actually invested in two balers. So one was to focus on your soft plastics, which you see in the far right of the screen. And then the other baler was cardboard as well. So We knew both types of packaging, cardboard and soft plastics, were easy enough in terms of baling and allow for just easier management of it. The other part of the packaging puzzle, and we all know, is polystyrene. It's an incredible product, essentially. I mean, we get materials delivered to site all the time. They need to be protected. They need to be protected from while they're being delivered, being offloaded on site, being stored on site. And it's light. It's 98% air, essentially, at the end of the day. But in terms of volume, polystyrene takes up a huge amount of space within mixed waste skips. And if you have ever gotten an excavator driver to try crush down a skip to get more room into it, and if there's any bit of polystyrene in it, it's just a bounce effect, and there's no way of really taking care of it apart from sending it to either landfill or otherwise. But the guys at Waste Matters had the ability to deliver us a mobile shredder unit. So the shredder unit allowed us to input the polystyrene packaging. It was then made into briquettes, which you see there in the middle photo, which allowed it to be basically shrunk down into more manageable briquettes and pieces, which were then able to be loaded on pallets, which were then able to be loaded onto Waste Matters trucks and brought back to their facility. So from those, the Waste Matters guys were able to produce from the soft plastics these products. You're looking at duct chambers, sleepers, fence posts. They even have flower pots, which I'll show you in the next photo. But the polystyrene packaging itself, when it's in more manageable loads, such as you see there in the bottom right, that's able to actually go back into reprocessing, and it becomes insulation products, and it will also be made back into packaging products. So you're essentially taking that product that what was a waste has now become a resource. So a good circularity piece to that there. Also part of the initiative was a donation of flower pots to a local school in Dublin. Those flower pots were made from recycled plastic from the Vantage site, which gives a nice little touch to the initiative that we initially had brought on, which was just purely based on environmental grounds, was then able to bring it into the social piece into it as well. After a lot of back and forth and working with RPM guys, we successfully achieved the zero plastic landfill certification back in July of 24. Very, very successful for the business, and a lot of interest was generated over it. Board members and all were attending the ceremony. They were huge interest in this, and none more so than when my case study, when I produced it and I developed it internally, it was downloaded 3,000 times. Now, there's only 2,500 people work for Sisk, so you can see how much of an interest there is in zero plastic to landfill, certainly within our company. And we have many more projects looking to jump on board with us. And just on the bottom right there, to show how Sisk really appreciates our supply chain, Neve from Thorntons was awarded the Net Zero Award for our recent supply chain awards that we hold annually, which kind of showcases how Sisk appreciate waste management within our company, and we realize that it is of great benefit for us to work together and collaborate together, such as with the guys from RPM. That is it from me, guys, and I'd be delighted to take any questions, but I think I'll be handing it off to yourself, Peter, just to finish off the webinar.
Yeah, thanks. If you want to stop sharing, then I'll try and switch across. Dave, did you just want to say a few words first, just while I'm pulling this up?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, just to add that up, Neve unfortunately was called away to works for Thorntons Recycling, who was instrumental in terms of buying into this particular initiative. with Sisk, and that goes also for Waste Matters, Paltech, I'll mention in a second as well. And I guess in to some extent, to summarize, so like this particular project, it really just shows the importance of what best practice means in a practical sense when it comes down to waste, and having Thornton's assistance in terms of, in simple sense, skips and bins, just assisting in sort of saying, yeah, we're willing to help with a range of skips and bins and the sizes necessary to help you get at that source segregation. So as soon as that plastic material is wasted, it's moved to a container of one size or another, so it's not contaminated. And having a mix of containers so that you can source into rigids, source into flexibles, as Keith said, and having those other pieces of kit on site, such as balers, for example, to be able to do some compaction or baling and get it on pallets is instrumental again in terms of getting the solutions to work and getting that best practice in place, and having a site team, of course, who are bought into that initiative as well. So a huge shout out to these companies, Thorntons, to Waste Matters, for their EPS recycling services, as well as for the flexibles, and to Paltech. So Paltech is the polymer engineering company that's creating these new products out of 100% recycled plastic that would have otherwise ended up, at best, recovered for energy, and most likely though in landfill. So these are new products which are now being used and can be used in construction. So these are circular solutions actually unfolding before us, just by the fact that we had this point of this initiative and a rallying around this idea that, we could do better things with plastic than put it in a hole in the ground. So enormous thanks to these companies who got involved in this project. And Peter, if you want to take it from there. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Thanks, Keith. It's great, it's priceless to have such advocacy from a leading organization like Sisk, who have really sort of got involved with this, from start through to, validation of best practice. So, this is a general slide that we sort of typically use. And it's really sort of identifying both outward benefits and inward benefits of, organizations that have sort of come on board. And I hope they resonate in terms of some of the things that Keith was talking about. This accolade sort of really, is a quick way of explaining subjective credentials. So when you see that somebody is engaged with a responsible plastic management, it translates quite well in terms of, a marketing communication and a signal of improved environmental standing. It helps get things in order. It's a journey. It's not all about the end point, so it's about improvement as you move forward. And really what we're sort of trying to say to people, this is a movement that we want people to get involved with, because without the momentum of people getting involved, we won't get the changes that we need. We won't get the encouragement to get solution providers to come in. Without momentum, we won't see where the plastic is, that we can start to sort of identify where the sort of valuable polymers are, that they can start to be identified and recycled and perhaps aggregated in some ways in a pre-competitive type way for some of the more smaller type people. But we're really sort of saying people who have come involved in this outwardly, they've been able to sort of identify where the value is. And then in terms of inward, benefits, we've seen, employee and supplier engagement. So again, I hope this resonates through, Keith's presentation, where, previously where you may have had waste management contractors and site and recyclers who didn't really engage sort of fully, are now together, working together in partnership for better solutions. And that is leading to cost savings. So, we've had organizations who are looking at sustainability and might think, oh, plastic management is a high cost, it's low, may have low impact relative to what the investment is. We've developed this as a low cost entry point, something that you can get involved in on a journey, and you can get high impact. You can get high impact with this, good results at an early stage. So we want to remove that perception that it's something to sit on the fence looking at. It's something that we want people get involved with, because without that involvement, we won't create the network that it's need to create these better opportunities, better infrastructure, better product and process alternatives. So we really encourage people to get involved with that. We do understand the problems, and we're able to sort of like, talk about those on coaching sessions, on learning. Sorry, my phone has just gone off. Sorry. On sort of like plastic literacy training, things that we can talk about, extended producer responsibility, new taxes, sort of like coming in, market requirements and stuff. So we do understand the problems that each of the sectors is dealing with, and we're looking at how you can do better, gain more knowledge. So know your plastics better. So if you know what that shrink wrap actually is, what sort of volumes that you have of it, we can have a better conversation with you, because this is about your business and your processes. We're really just coaches at the side to say we can actually reduce down that sort of like impact problem. Hopefully there'd be more opportunities to buy better alternatives, better processes that actually work, and manage processes in a better way. So again, we're not anti-plastic. Where plastic has its place, it's really functional. It is a wonder product, but we want to manage it better. And we can manage the waste better through source segregation, through better conversations with the waste management companies and the recyclers. So we're bringing them into the network in order that they can have better opportunities for collaboration. So this is about collaboration internally and externally. So in terms of, when we're trying to sell our services, we're talking about training and coaching. We're talking about engagement in some form of project, which looks at metrics. And then again, we say this is an optional. This is an optional extra. Certification is there for those who want it and those who need it. Once you sort of like get involved in this journey, as long as you're moving forward, as long as you're doing something positive, we're happy for people to be associated, engaged, a market as being sort of like part of the program. But there does come a time where people become more confident to say, I don't mind a third party coming in and validating what I'm actually doing. And so we have those accolades of responsible plastic management and zero plastic to landfill certification. So I think we're just sort of like, coming well on time here. We're probably a little bit short because Niamh wasn't able to join us today and do the Thorntons bit. But I'd like to thank you for your interest, to thank Keith for giving up his time and some of the insights from the Sisk perspective, and ask, any comments, any questions, any observations. We're happy to take some questions on and hopefully give some, good answers for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And thanks, Keith and Dave also. Really helpful guidance there, and much to consider as well. The Q&A chat remains open, so please do feel free to use. We did have one or two questions come through. The first question, potentially for Dave. What is the best advice that waste management companies can give construction organisations who are prepping for better plastic waste management?
Yeah, thanks, Vincent. Yeah. Well, an enormous amount of advice probably waste contractors can give. And I think, first of all, we can't underestimate the role that they play. And it's really important to engage them meaningfully, and also collaborate with them in terms of what works and what doesn't work, also from their perspective. So it's important to understand their infrastructure, what the limitations are, what they can and what they can't do. And it's important also to have a very open conversation about where others might be able to support that particular solution as well. And definitely in this particular case example, all that was brought together, and unfortunately I know Niamh's not here to sort of like give us some of her own insights on that, but certainly, in terms of Thornton's capabilities, in terms of their material recovery facilities, both one which produces SDF, solid derived fuel, another which is a cleaner plant, and it's really about trying to sort of identify what type of plastics are valuable and meaningful, for that organization, and again, their assistance in terms of helping site managers understand the best way to start to look at how to segregate, and also the limitations on that as well. And there were plenty of challenging conversations about, how to identify polymers, which polymer is which, and it's quite confusing when you start to look at some of those rigid plastics, such as pipes. Is it a PVC? Is it a high density polyethylene? And there are limits. But what we say to companies, just make a start. Start the journey. And even if you start to say, well, we could pull out from this general waste some of these flexibles, it wouldn't look like that. It wouldn't be contaminated, and of little use. It would, once we're finished with it, had we had got at it earlier. So again, I can't underestimate, and waste contracts will say this as well, source segregation. The quicker you can get to it on sites and move it out of that, so like that current pathway, which ends up in general waste quite often, the quicker you can get at it and move it into a different pathway, ending up in obviously cleaner, recyclable material and materials that's been segregated, even if it's not into single polymers, even if it is multiple polymers, even if it's just we're pulling out some rigids, and getting them across into this skip. We're pulling out flexibles, so we can at least get it across, and we've got a dedicated place now where we can start looking at baling. And of course, all sites look different. We appreciate that. So we appreciate that there are limitations in terms of what you can and can't do depending on the space which is available. But we think we've got solutions that can assist everyone. And we believe that through that collaboration, more solutions will come forward as people come together and work together towards it. So yeah, I guess it's hitting a long way around us saying, in terms of how waste contracts can help, but engage them, bring them into the conversation. It's vitally important.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dave. Thanks. We do have one more question here. What do waste management companies need to know to provide a more effective, responsible plastic management service?
Do you want me to take that again? Yeah. So what do they need to know? They have some data, of course, absolutely, because they know what they're taking off sites, and they've got good measurement, usually anyway, in terms of weigh bridges, etc., and load cells. So they have an idea what they're taking. But if it's all mixed up into one general waste skip, it's very difficult for them to get the insight to sort of say, well, what is the potential value we're missing here had this been sorted out? So the more you can the more construction companies can bring them in, even in terms of this is the materials that we're going to encounter at different phases in the project. This is what it will look like in hard plastics, in flexibles, and in whatever that material might be, So and the more you can get at the detail, this is a specification we're using. This is the type of material it is. This is what we expect in terms of offcuts and trimmings, for example. So this is the volume of this type of material that we're likely to encounter at this point in a build. Then the better opportunity they have to plan for it, and consider what are the solutions, what are the options they can provide. So yeah, I guess back onto that collaboration, but some insight and sharing data is useful as well.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. There's no other questions at the minute, so I think with that we can draw to a close there. So to just say thanks again to all the presenters. It was really fascinating and some interesting statistics in there as well. So thanks again to all of you for joining us as well, and thank you to RPM for their guidance on this. So with that, I'll draw to a close there. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.